Yeah,
I'm done.
Welcome to Watch Your Point Overtime, where we've got a lot of unfinished business because, as one producer said, there was not a lot of caring and sharing in terms of airtime today. but that's because we've got this bonus period to talk about. Two of the big issues that stuck out to me, and I think there's more to be said on it, is the school choice debate, which we've had. And also to return to what's going on, the ramifications of these incidents, cases. I mean, it's a term of art, so to speak, whether it's a case or an allegation, but something went wrong usually.
I think Chris had it right when he said incident.
Incident.
And that's not to take away from the victims and what happened to them. It's just that we don't know what all the incidents are. Now, in those incidents are, yes, somebody snatched a poster off of the wall, and in those incidents, somebody beat the hell out of someone else, and someone was sexually assaulted, possibly, according to Holly, Chief Fenner couldn't answer whether or not there was a murder. So there are incidents, but within those incidents, there are some serious crimes that took place, and real leadership needs to happen. Mayor Whitmire has to step up and stand firm with his chief, and the chief has to step up and stand firm with his department. Whether he should go or stay, that's the mayor's decision to make. I personally believe that he needs to have the opportunity to lead, and if he gets the opportunity to lead, then he has to be held accountable in what he is promising to do. Accountable like he should have held his chiefs, his assistant chiefs and lieutenants that he gave that order to.
Let me just one point on that one,
yes.
just really quick. The mayor is going to propose a new third-party independent study, right? I hope it is independent and not a retired police officer.
What happened to the last? That was an independent review that was in the last administration, right? That was a council, a board.
It still exists, yeah.
What happened to
that was I think that came out of the George Floyd.
No. There was that too. So there was the police commission that was created from George Floyd, but we also have an IPOB, an Independent Police Oversight Board, that exists separate. And during the George Floyd thing, it was kind of conflated the two, but it is a separate one that has existed, I think, since Parker maybe or something.
But that wasn't created for this.
No.
The mayor's creating one for this.
Right. This is third reform.
Should any of us really be surprised? And I brought this up earlier. 2.5 million people in the city of Houston with hundreds of thousands more coming in and out from the suburbs, that on any given day 400 or 500 cops can police them all effectively as a preventative force, a preemptive force. Or Chris, you deal with it all the time.
Yeah, we need a larger police force, and it doesn't mean by growing the force, it doesn't mean you're growing an oppressive force. It means that you've got enough people on the streets to effectively patrol and effectively get somewhere in a timely fashion. When someone picks up the phone and dials 911 and says, I'm being attacked, I'm being assaulted, or someone's breaking into my home, you can get there in a timely fashion to help someone. That's not oppression. That is an effective patrol force to help the citizens.
Okay,
is that the problem that we're experiencing, right? Is the problem that we're experiencing that cops aren't responding quick enough, fast enough?
Yes, the response times are down. That's documented.
To what sorts of crimes? To 911 crimes that he's talking about? To crimes where someone's being assaulted, someone's being beat up? I agree that there is possibly room for more officers. But I also agree that with some of the research that says that yes, that when you increase officers, there is a path to an increase in oppression, as you stated. And I just want us to be mindful of that. I don't want us to just throw that out of the window. But the first thing,
what's the answer? Hold on. Let's get this. It's okay, if we add more officers, it's oppressive.
I never said
it's oppressive.
I never said that. Those are words that never came out of my mouth. I said that there's research that shows the possibility of the increase, and I'm using the oppressive language because Chris said it. There's research that shows that. Now, you asked what's the answer? Answer is what we would do in any other company, in any other organization, any other entity. First thing we have to do is we got to go back and we got to scrub each department within the department and find out what's working, what's not working, how do we perform more efficiently, more effectively. Highest and best use time of officers should be top priority. Are we using the officers? When the Goins report came out, we showed that officers are working side jobs and side jobs and side jobs. And if they're working side jobs here, there, and everywhere, then what is it preventing them from working the job at HPD? I just think that we have to first scrub the department and find out how do we run this thing more efficiently, more effectively, and then we can decide, and change the culture, because evidently there's a culture that needs to be addressed because we hid 264,000 incidents. We hid a ton and layers of corruption as revealed in the FBI goings. So we have to change the culture before we can just add new people inside the department, my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair shake.
And just want to say, because we haven't talked about this very much, and I didn't get a chance to bring this up, but 2014, our Houston Chronicle headline, HPD can't investigate every crime and should not. Skipping down, it says, since 2013, they did not investigate 20,000 crimes with workable leads, vast majority of cases burglaries and thefts, 3,000 assaults, 3,000 hit and runs. So this has been a long-running problem that the public has known about, forgot about, and has gotten significantly worse. That was only 2 years from when they started implementing this code. Seems like they probably implemented this code because of what was going on at that time, and then they just didn't want to. They wanted to close out these cases. But I mean, that was Chuck McClelland, who was the HPD chief then. Then you had Acevedo. Now we have Finner. 3 chiefs who oversaw this issue. Nobody did anything about. 2, I guess 2014. That's still Parker. 3 mayors finally getting this problem taken care of. There are so many issues like this within the city that just run on and on and on, and so that's why I'm only slightly hesitant to lay it at the feet of Chief Finner, because he's just the one that the glass broke when he was holding it.
Let me ask this question. How many crimes have occurred at the business or to your family, and how many have been solved?
How many? A lot. How many have been solved? None. I mean, look, I'm just going to be honest, right?
Yeah.
The crimes that have occurred at my business, at my home, majority of them have been solved by Marcus, right? No, literally, I've literally had to set up, stake out, find out who was breaking in cars in my back parking lot, and then when you call the police, there are restrictions as to whether or not and why they're not going to respond. Are they breaking into the car? Right now, I said no. I caught him and he ran away. Well, technically, he hasn't committed a crime. I'm like, well, shoot, this is the same guy that broke in 2 weeks ago, because I just saw him on my camera. So I literally had to get in the car, chase him down the highway, make sure he stayed in the place, and get the cops there. Police react to crimes more so than they prevent crimes. And that's the one thing that I want to make sure that we understand. Because if we're talking about a prevention of crime, there's more reaction to crimes than there is prevention of crime by increasing police officers.
One thing we talk about, to your point, and we talk about this idea of community policing, where you have police presence in communities, in neighborhoods, where they're talking to people, they know people. We need to have a larger force if we're going to enable certain patrol officers to do that. Right now, they don't have time. And it's not just the Houston Police Department. It's the Harris County Sheriff's Office, too. I have a friend in the Sheriff's Department told me that at some of these substations, there will be 20 to 30 calls on hold at any given time, at any point during the day, because they do not also have the staff to cope with all of the crime that's occurring. And let's remember that Houston, Harris County is not, isolated. Now look around at some of the other parts of the nation. Look what's happening in New York right now, where they're bringing in the National Guard to essentially stop and frisk on the subway, because crime is so out of control there. And it's not just the police, it's the whole system where you're not prosecuting, you're not really doing what you need to do to take the frequent offenders off the streets.
You asked the question, what is the solution? Well, we have to do things differently. Now, in large urban city, New York, Chicago, LA, Chicago has a lot of per density police officers, yet the crime rate is high. But the issue is that if you look at Houston as a large urban city, but there's 80 small municipalities. You have Metro Police, Airport Police, HISD Police, all these others. And some of these, the question is, and I like the idea of Mayor Whitmire suggesting collaboration amongst all of them, not working in isolation and silos and small items. The issue is that There's not going to be enough time, money, energy to recruit the 40% extra officers in any large urban city. So we have to do things differently and have collaboration with other police departments in order to address the crime problem. The issue is, I had 2 incidents recently calling HPD officers, and they didn't respond. They just did not respond. I had to call the constable's office, and they were there in 5 minutes. So collaboration with other police agencies is effective policing, not increasing policing, because it'll a huge constraint. If our HPD gets this, that will constrain the budget of our city. Now, if you have folks, it's called really, in reality, underutilized policing in some of these municipalities. Some of these municipalities give 2 tickets all day long, whereas these other ones are fighting high-level violent crimes.
Let's talk about the interlocking chain, the fragile links, so to speak, of the criminal justice system. So we've got understaffed, undermotivated police officers, as in the quote, firehouse police. We just show up and kind of clean up the mess and move on. We don't do anything preemptive. So you've got understaffed police departments. You've got prosecutors who may be influenced by an ideology of we're going to do lots of deferreds, we're going to do lots of probation, we're going to kick a lot of cases on intake. And then you've got a panel of judges who are also ideologically driven, who have taken upon themselves to reform the bonding system, whether we're going to give a lot of PR bonds and only cash bonds on really, really serious cases. And it's just, to me,
you have an understaffed crime lab as well.
And then you have an understaffed crime lab. And if you're really good and you've gotten away with stuff, you can hire very good legal talent like Chis Tritico. I mean, hey, it all sounds to me like it's a pretty fertile field if you want to be a criminal.
Perfect storm.
So, did you exclude understaffed DA's office?
Yeah.
Well, they're understaffed.
The ADAs, I'm told, some of their caseloads, some of them have 700 cases that they're supposed to be working. How is that even possible to efficiently
with high turnover
prosecute? Right.
The system.
I'm sad now.
Yeah.
The system certainly needs a lot of work, and the DA's office needs, and I think Sean Tier has addressed this with respect to the intake system. Kim Ogg changed the intake system when she took office and modified the way it works and brought in outside people to work intake. And I think that was a huge mistake in the way that intake has been done. Traditionally, it had been done by experienced DAs from within the office doing overtime, who were dealing with intake, and you had to have a certain level of experience to work intake. And when it was done that way, the people who were working intake and talking to the officers who were calling in knew what probable cause was. The current system, I think, has been flawed, and I think that when the change comes, that you'll see a better intake system.
What was the reason for the change? Or the
same question.
Jim Leitner, is Jim Leitner in charge of intake? Is he not experienced?
Well, having a chief that's experienced is not the issue. It's the people who are picking up the phone, who are coming out of law school, who never tried a case and don't.
Well, did she transfer those experienced attorneys on intake into actually taking care of cases?
Well, they just went back to the courtroom. So what it was I've been trying cases for 15 years, and I want to make extra money because I'm going to get married or something. And so they would take shifts and work overtime, work all night long, and work intake and take those calls from police officers. And to save, I think it was a money-saving thing. You'd have to ask him, but I think it was a money-saving thing to take that role out, and you couldn't work overtime and work intake. She just hired people to be intake officers, and that was, I think, a bad mistake. On the bond thing, I think that there's a lot to be done with bonds in Texas, but it has to start with the legislature. And in the bond situation in Harris County started with a lawsuit, we have to remember. And our Code of Criminal Procedure sets the way judges set bonds. And our Constitution and our Code of Criminal Procedure gives a judge the authority, the way we set bonds. Now, there can be a lot said about some bonds are too low. And the DA's office has a right and ability to go in and object to that, file a motion and object. And if the DA files a motion and doesn't ask for a hearing, the judge has no ability to do anything about that.
I want to ask you this question, and I'll ask it to the panel, because if you listen to that panel discussion that I guess it was a forum, Tier talked about doing away with probation and moving heavily to deferreds, and with the criteria being show us you're doing better. I think it's naive to think people who are making $4, $5, $6 grand a week stealing and trafficking are going to go sign up to be a plumber's apprentice. And that people who have 5, 6 convictions are going to give up that life in order to go do something else. So maybe a percentage of them, and maybe the younger offenders. But I mean, I think that's naive.
So we have to. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, do you think that's who he's talking to, or is he talking more about, and I can't defend his
No. I mean, we need to ask him about it.
Yeah, is he talking about first timers? If we're talking about first time offenders, someone who needs a chance, that's one thing. If we're talking about someone who gets arrested for assault and has a warrant out for his arrest for assault with a deadly weapon, I don't know what should allow that person to get the type of leniency. I mean, if they, I believe in reform. I believe once people have, I think you should get a chance, right? And then I think after you get a chance and you mess up on that chance, yes, you got to pay the price. And then when you pay the price, there's an opportunity for reform. And if you reform, then so be it. But I don't know that we should be, as much as I don't think we should be criminalizing citizens, I don't believe that we should be jeopardizing safety of citizens at the expense of sounding good and democratic talking points.
Well, let me just say something about that. When someone, especially a young person, when you get a felony conviction, you are excluded from most jobs.
Exactly.
Period.
Right. Yeah.
And so you can't be a plumber. Okay, you can't get a plumber's license when you have a felony conviction. You can't get any license. And so what I think Sean is talking about when he says let's give deferreds over probations is because once you say guilty and the judge gives you a probation, you are a convicted felon. Period. It's over. When you get a deferred and you've successfully completed it, you are not a convicted felon. Okay, you've successfully completed it. The case is dismissed at the end of the day. Although you've done your deferred, you've completed a sentence, you're not a convicted felon. Okay? And so, but the downside risk of a deferred is if you screw it up and they adjudicate your guilt at the end, the judge can give you the maximum sentence under the law. So if it's a second-degree felony and you do 10 years of that deferred and you mess it up, the judge can give you 20 years in prison for screwing it up.
So lawyers, they say don't ask questions they don't know the answer to already.
They say it depends.
Reporters, we ask lots of questions because we don't know the answer. And so my question becomes, what percentage of the crime out there is being committed by people who have already been in the system? And I think it's a large percentage. Charles volunteers.
What?
Yeah, he volunteers. Volunteers and tries to help.
I mean, it's a small pool of people that typically do all this. I mean, that are repeat. Not all of them are out on PR bonds. Some of them bond out. But my issue too is that we often talk about kind of first timers, second timers, third timers. But what about that first timer who does something egregious, who has the money to bond out and then just bonds out? Like, how is that okay as well? And that's where I take issue with part of the conversation. It's like we have a lot of people and not just in Texas, across the country, who do really bad things and just happen to have the money or have the family money or whatever to be able to get out. And those people are equally as much of a risk. And so I liked when Whitmire, during the press conference, mentioned kind of shifting a little more to a true risk assessment model.
Exactly.
But, you know, is the will there to do it? I hope. We should. Yeah. We need to do something different.
I'm not sure. I mean, I agree with you. It needs to be a more risk assessment based model. But you know, let's be honest here. We have some judges, and as Greg put it, in the decarceration movement, there are people who believe in zero pretrial incarceration, and in some cases, no post-trial incarceration. You know, so that's the other dynamic here, and there is not a one-size-fits-all, right? You know, I mean, there really needs to be an individual assessment of every person that's coming before them, and the judges need to have all of the information, which sometimes they don't always have, right? They don't know that Charles got arrested in Montgomery County and you know, Fort Bend County too last year. I know, it's terrible.
Talk about it.
Yeah, it's a family thing. But you know, I mean, they need to have that information, and they you know, public safety needs to come first.
The federal.
Let me just add.
So you're not really volunteering as community
experience
service.
as administrator, and this is a couple of rule of thumbs. You know, the prison, the pipeline argument, and all that kind of stuff. One rule of thumb that I learned many years ago is from a professor. He said 95% of the crime is committed by 5% of the people. So I always kept that in mind. When I would discipline students or they committed an infraction of the code of student conduct, I always knew they were that 5%. But you can tell when it's the first timer or the one that's been doing it 5 or 6 times, and you just hold them accountable. Now, I always believe that an ounce of prevention saves a gallon of headaches down the road. But the real issue was that my biggest concern is that you can arrest a young student at the age of 16 and go to trial, get a citation, go to court. You literally have ruined his life because now he has a criminal record. Even though his mind is a 16-year-old, even though he committed a drug possession, accidentally brought a knife to
We're all targeting you.
Get arrested in Montgomery County now.
We're talking in a minute. But I always felt that, you know, they're so young that the system can destroy them.
We can help them.
It's better to help them.
Certainly.
So, and the case of, it's not naiveness, but it is a small percentage of helping, you know, let's be compassionate.
That's right.
Let's do that first. And if that doesn't work, then we drop the hammer on
it.
I agree with that. And I think there's bipartisan agreement on that aspect of it, right? I mean, there was bipartisan agreement that we needed some misdemeanor bail reform, and I still think there's room for an ongoing debate.
But Kim did that, I think.
She did that.
I mean, you know, no one, we've said it time and time again, no one wants poor people languishing in jail, losing their jobs, their houses, their families, and their cars. That's not good for society, and we, as a society, collectively agree on that.
Right.
So,
but that was used as an entree to attack the system.
Because we were doing it. That's the problem.
For
That's
years.
why it was used as
So
Most
the rest of us have to pay penance for that?
I'm saying they went to an extreme, but it was one extreme response to an extreme.
Right,
and
right.
that's the problem.
The extreme response was because and this is just what happened. The Republicans who ran the court system would not change. And that's why the federal judge issued the extreme harsh order that came out, is because they would not agree to change.
And we follow the money, and people were getting rich on bonds in the bond industry.
And we have to follow the partisan politics, right? Because we have to throw that in. Why this whole system that you described, from the state constitution to judges to DA's office to what happens on the local level, all of this is affected and impacted by people not wanting to work together, people wanting to carry the torch for their party and not come to true resolution. It's why we're still having the immigration debate. It's why we're still having several other debates that are just really not based on the issue itself. It's based on
wait a second. I want to give us, because I promised to give everybody a little bit of time. We got 3 minutes left on the issue of school choice. And that's also follow the money. Because I think in a lot of ways, this is just about the battle for resources. It's not. It's no different than anything else.
No,
and in other states where they've had school choice, public school systems have not collapsed. And that's so anyway,
is the public school system not collapsing a measure of success? Is the public school system not collapsing a measure of success?
One at a time.
That's like saying, go ahead.
Go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead. Yes, and even in the bill that they did not pass, but they considered in the legislature, there was a provision in there that if a public school district lost a student, they would get more money for it. I mean, it was in the public schools still didn't even want that because they don't want the competition. And in terms of not having schools for these kids to go to, it was either the start of one of the specials for school choice. It was I don't know his name, but the Catholic
diocese.
Yes, over this area, along with DiNardo, along with a very wealthy school choice supporter and another business individual, came out with a letter saying that they would reopen a lot of these Catholic schools that have closed over the years if they got school choice, because it would give these families the money to be able to get into
DiNardo said that?
In a joint.
Got about a minute left.
Well, let me just say that the public school system does not collapse. What happens is that I believe it's Oklahoma that has the largest school voucher program. I believe what it did was that students that were already going to private school, they went back to private school with a private school discount. The other thing, it's going to free up voucher money. It's going to free up money for more charter schools, and then it's going to gut more of the private schools, public school system. But let me just
charter schools or public schools.
As the other thing is that again, it's a voucher program. It's a big business program. Now the issue is this. The issue is this.
Public
as an educator,
big business too.
Always better to educate than to incarcerate. So even if you train the plumber and the electrician, he can do a side job and create his own business.
Okay. No, we gotta go. What I learned is we gotta talk about this again. So tune in
double
next
overtime?
week. What's that?
Double overtime?
I gotta go
Double
to church.
overtime. Have a great week, everybody.
Hey guys.